Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tearing down the massive walls of Lordran to explore one of the absolute master classes in game design and storytelling. We are going to peel back the curtain on the incredibly subversive in-game mythos of Dark Souls, and we're going to contrast that directly with the fascinating real-world design philosophy of its director, Hidetaka Miyazaki. If you've ever felt that wild mix of awe, crushing despair, and ultimate triumph while navigating this game, well, you're about to find out exactly how and why that whole experience was engineered. Here's a quick roadmap for our explainer today. We're looking at the Chosen Undead myth, Miyazaki's abstract vision, elegance in decay, the tragic monsters, and finally, true determination. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the Chosen Undead myth, the greatest lie in Lordran. It's the big question that pretty much echoes through every single crumbling corridor of the game, right? Are you really the Chosen Undead? You're told from the jump that you're destined for greatness, but the deeper you go into the game, the more that grand narrative just starts to totally fall apart. There is a massive contrast between what you're told and what's actually happening behind the scenes. On one hand, you have this prophecy. You're told you're the destined hero, meant to link the flame. But as the fan community has brilliantly figured out over the years, the reality is that this prophecy is essentially just an artificial meat grinder. It's a completely fabricated legend designed purely to lure powerful, capable undead to Lordran to serve as nothing more than kindling for the first flame. You aren't some legendary hero chosen by fate. You're literally just the next log for the fire. And to really wrap our heads around the scale of this deception, we have to talk about hollowing. Hollowing is the process of losing your mind, your humanity, and your memories after repeated, agonizing deaths. Countless other supposedly chosen undead have come before you, broken themselves against this brutal world, and just given up. Think of the crestfallen warrior you meet at Fireling's Shrine. He knows the score. The path you're walking is paved with the hollowed husks of thousands of people who thought they were the main character, only to completely shatter under the pressure. Moving right along to Section 2, Abstract Vision, Building Lordran. Let's step out of the game for a second and into the real world. How did the mastermind behind all this actually build such a beautiful nightmare? Well, Miyazaki's workflow was highly collaborative and pretty unusual. Instead of handing out rigid blueprints, he guided his team using totally abstract concepts. Step 1. He'd give his artists simple image words. For example, he might tell them to draw something you can trust with your life on the battlefield. Step 2. He gave them absolute creative freedom to interpret what that felt like. And Step 3. They'd talk it over. They'd get into these incredibly deep philosophical discussions about life, death, and space just to unify the designs. He actively avoided giving specific instructions because he wanted his artist imaginations to completely eclipse his own. And out of this abstract collaboration, 3 core foundational themes emerged for the art team. First, you have gods and knights, perfectly captured in that golden, towering architecture of Anor Londo. Then there's chaos and fire, which heavily influences the demonic, overgrown ruins of Lost Izalith. And finally, death and decay, embodied by Gravelord Nito and the intensely oppressive depths of the catacombs. Rather than locking artists into specific zones, the whole team contributed across all these themes to make the world feel completely cohesive. Which brings us to Section 3, Elegance in Decay, the art philosophy. Even in a world that is practically overflowing with death, demons, and dark fantasy, Miyazaki enforced one incredibly strict aesthetic rule. He said, "I always tried to maintain a certain level of refinement and elegance in all designs. I often told the artist that muddy or messy is definitely not good." This is so crucial to the game's identity. It's exactly why the world of Lordran, despite being completely ruined and horrific, never feels like cheap, mindless gore. There's a really profound dignity to the decay. Let's look at a practical example of this. Take the undead dragon. The original concept from the artist was a dragon just entirely covered in maggots. It was gross, just for the sake of being gross. But Miyazaki actually pushed back on that. His vision was to capture the profound sadness of a great creature marching slowly toward extinction. So he stripped away the cheap disgust and replaced it with genuine emotional resonance. And this philosophy completely extended to the environments, too. Look at Blighttown. It is notoriously the rawest, most physically disgusting area in the entire game. But Miyazaki didn't just want you to feel grossed out. He directed the team to make sure the area possessed a deep, underlying sadness and felt bitterly cold. That emotional undercurrent is exactly what makes the atmosphere there so unforgettably oppressive. Let's dive into Section 4, Tragic Monsters, the Hidden Sorrow. So that sense of elegance and sadness, It bleeds directly into the lore of the enemies you're constantly cutting down. Think about Ceaseless Discharge. When you first run into him in the demon ruins, he just looks like this terrifying, towering giant made entirely of magma and pure hatred. As a player, your first instinct is just pure intimidation. But the hidden lore behind this boss is absolutely heartbreaking. Miyazaki actually revealed that Ceaseless Discharge is the youngest of Izalith's children. He is basically burning alive, constantly in agonizing pain from the uncontrollable flames of chaos. And the only reason he just stands there, gazing up at the ruins, is the belief that his sisters are watching over him. It completely flips the context of the fight. You aren't just slaying a monster, you're putting a tortured, grieving creature out of its misery. Now, it's worth mentioning that sometimes this behind-the-scenes design process led to some pretty weird and honestly slightly hilarious character quirks. Take Big Hat Logan. Late in the game, the guy strips completely naked to cast off his human clothes, trying to seek enlightenment and get closer to the ancient dragons. Why? Well, because Miyazaki realized the 3D character models in the game were way too limited to express complex emotional states of enlightenment, so his workaround was just have him take off all his clothes. It's such a perfect example of turning a technical limitation into a memorable piece of lore. Oh, and we definitely have to talk about the Mimic. Miyazaki really hated how predictable mimics had become in other fantasy games. He wanted to genuinely shock the player, so the design team gave it these long, terrifyingly lanky limbs and a completely bizarre fighting style. Fun fact, that wild sweeping kick it does, that's directly modeled after the Japanese professional wrestler Super Tiger's rolling so bad kick. It's exactly these kinds of wild creative liberties that give the game its totally unique flavor. Finally, let's wrap up with Section 5, True Determination, Why You Succeed. So, bringing this whole thing full circle back to your role in this beautifully crafted, totally indifferent world, we've established that the game actively deceives you. If the prophecy is a complete lie and literally every single undead that gets dropped into Lordran is told they're the chosen one, then what actually makes you, the player, so special? Why are you the one who ultimately defeats the gods? Someone in the Reddit community hit the nail on the head with this. They said, the whole prophecy is basically Lordran's version of infinite monkeys eventually typing Shakespeare. Your success wasn't written in the stars at all. It's simply the result of an unimaginably brutal process of trial and error. You are just the one attempt out of millions that managed to string together the exact right sequence of dodges, parries, and strikes. Which means, ultimately, you don't possess any sort of divine power. Your only real superpower is your sheer stubborn determination. It's the simple, quiet refusal to quit. Every single time you died, lost your souls, and felt the absolute urge to throw your controller across the room and walk away, but chose to pick it back up, you were defying the hollow curse. You succeed not because you were chosen, but because you flat out refused to break when the world demanded it. So I want to leave you with this final thought to chew on. In a world and a game that is meticulously engineered to break your spirit, to offer you an elegant, tragic, but completely inevitable demise, is your stubbornness your greatest weapon? Next time you face an insurmountable challenge, remember the Chosen Undead. You don't need a prophecy to win, you literally just need to try one more time. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.